Hi, Leanne here. This is part 2 of 3 videos that I've made as an accompaniment to the DRAGONsong video that I uploaded. This is a snippet of that DRAGONsong, and if you haven't seen it yet, you may want to pause the video here and go and watch the full-length DRAGONsong. It's under 5 minutes, so it won't take you long. And you probably want to go and watch part 1 if you haven't already, because this is part 2 of 3. So you may want to also go back and watch part 1. Links to both the full DRAGONsong and part 1 I will put in the description for you. So go and do that and come back. And I'm now going to go into what this part 2 will cover. So it's continuing the behind the scenes of the DRAGONsong video. We're going to look at what the ElvenStar is. This is a term coined by James Burgess, which I'll touch on in a minute, and how these are keys for soul growth. And I will do a walkthrough of my own chart, my own Sacred 7 path, to give you an idea of what that looks like in practice. And then last, I'll look at the asteroid alignment as an introduction to part 3. In the part 1, we looked at the houses. So this is where my Earth Leo is in the 6th house of day-to-day routine. And James Burgess in the Sacred 7 Points gives like a headline and pathway which starts with the scope. And the scope for my Earth Leo, according to the Sabian symbols, which I'll go into in a second, the scope is enthusiasm. It's the key word for the scope of the point where my Earth Leo is. And we go over to the Capricorn point, and the key word for that is foundation. And the path step, I guess you could call it, is means of expansion. So my means of expansion in the 11th house of social networks is foundation. My scope in my day-to-day routine is enthusiasm. Across to the 5th house of self-expression, and that step is the preferred path, which is the key word for that is background. So my preferred path in the area of self-expression is background, and that background is more like lineage, ancestry, when that word background is being used, which will become clear when I go through the symbols themselves. Then over to the 10th house and what's known as what he calls the principal challenge. So in my 10th house, I have the principal challenge of transition. Down to the 3rd house of interaction with my environment, and this step is the awareness of spiritual purpose, and my key word for this point is reformulation. Over to the 8th house of intimacy and shared resources. This is the feedback that's gathered from the awareness of spiritual purpose, and in my case, and for this point, that keyword is threshold. And it's more about the threshold. I would say it's like a liminal space type of threshold. Again, will become clear when I go into the symbols in a minute. And then lastly, in my 1st house of self, this step is the evolutionary gateway. And that great word, discipline, is here. And that's really funny because being an Aquarian sun, and therefore Saturn being the ruler of my Aquarian sun, this is interesting that the keyword for the first house of self and evolutionary gateway should be discipline. That to me is a very Saturnian word, and I love the description of it being like a disciple, becoming a disciple of something, and that means you become disciplined. And again, just completing the septagram, the 7-pointed star, by taking it back to my Earth Leo. So before I go any further, I'm going to go into Sabian symbols for anyone watching this that's not familiar. And I've put the website, James Burgess's website address here, because this is where I source the information about the ElvenStar. And he offers a course on it. I haven't done that course yet. I definitely intend to, but I haven't done it yet. So just to make you aware that if that has interested you, he does offer a course. And this is just a quick summary of what the Sabian symbols are, with the 3 key players here. So Elsie Wheeler in the middle was a gifted clairvoyant, and she, I guess you could say, channeled the symbols, and Mark Edmund Jones captured those symbols as they came through, and they both worked on it together, but she was the actual channel for the information. And then Dane Rudyard picked up their work, popularized the Sabian symbols with his own work on the subject. This is the ElvenStar with the currents of energy that I painted to make the DRAGONsong. And this is a summary from James's own site about the ElvenStar, the 7th harmonic being the septile aspect, and that the ElvenStar reveals 7 key life lessons. And I have chosen to take that start point as the Earth sign for reasons I explained in part 1, to do with ley lines of energy and the Earth. So we're building this picture here. We've got the houses, we've got the keywords and the path steps. And now I'm going to add in the symbols, starting with Earth. So this is the Sabian symbol for my Earth sign. Children play on a swing hanging from the branches of a huge oak tree. Yes, I can see why that would convert into enthusiasm. Then over to Capricorn and social networks. An ancient bas-relief carved in granite remains a witness to a long forgotten culture. Foundation. So that's really interesting that that has come up, because when I read that symbol, it makes me think of the moai on East Island, Rapa Nui. And my own ethnicity is Polynesian and English. So this is very foundational for me, and it's in the house of community, so it really resonates. Then over to the 5th house, and that symbol is a large archaic volume, reveals a traditional wisdom, and as I said before, the background is more about lineage, and this large archaic volume, this does resonate in terms of my expression and creative work. It's all based in looking at the ancient past of both my roots and also the astrology. So looking at, because astrology goes so far back and is archetypal wisdom, really. Then up to the 10th house, a rabbit metamorphoses into a nature spirit. Transition. Yes, I can relate to that too. I've had more than one public self transition, and I'm literally in the middle of one at the moment. Over to the third house of interaction. Through imagination, a lost opportunity is regained. Reformulation in my interactions. Yes, that also makes sense and is linked to the 10th house and transition and continually reformulating myself. And over to the 8th house, where it's a bit more nebulous, this one, and appropriate that it is that way because it's in the 8th house. So I'm still actually mulling over what this one might mean. And last but not least, over to the 1st house, the parade of army officers in full dress. Yes, discipline, self-discipline. And I would say that that really resonates in terms of receiving a cancer diagnosis in 2015, and that forced me to have self-discipline, discipline in my day-to-day routine to keep my body healthy. And again, completing the 7-pointed star by going back to Earth. This is the kind of data set that I put together for the Sacred 7. And it will be supplemented by asteroids. Speaking of which, in part 3, we're going to look at asteroids and my personal synchronicities that lead me to use asteroids as a really pinpoint energies in the chart. And then again, my walkthrough of my own chart to see where those deities reside and therefore where their support is in my chart. I'm just going to go back to just highlight the Earth sign just as a teaser. So my Earth sign is Leo 11. And when I was looking at the asteroids and considering a point that, again, my friend that introduced me to the Earth signs had noticed that people have, there are 2 other people she knows where there's a connection between an asteroid and where they live. And I wanted to look at, okay, well, is this true for me? And I looked at the place, and it's specifically Indigenous place names. So I grew up in a place called Titirangi, that's the suburb name, which is in the wider area of the Waitakere. Both of those are Indigenous names, Titirangi, Waitakere. And in the city of Tamakimakoro, which is the Māori place name for Auckland, which is the city I grew up in. So I looked for all of those in the asteroids. There are thousands of asteroids, and there's almost an asteroid for every name you can think of, but not for those 3 names, I guess unsurprisingly, because they're very specific, being Māori, the Māori language. And I thought, oh no, I was positive I was going to find something that, linked the where I grew up to my astrology, my star map, and there would be an asteroid that would do that. Then I remembered the road I grew up on. So Huia Road is where I grew up. Again, Huia is a Māori word, and it's actually an extinct native bird, and is the subject of the search in Hunt for the Wilder People, the film, if anyone has seen that. It's one of my favourite movies. So yes, I grew up on Huia Road, and yes, Huia is the name of an asteroid. And this is where these things, never cease to amaze me and amuse me in equal measure. Huia the asteroid is at Leo, 9 degrees and 7 minutes. So the name of the road I grew up on is conjunct not only my earth sign, and then my earth sign is in the most earth and home house of my chart. So that's like just sharing a bit of the magic of what you can discover with asteroids when you start using them. So that is what I'm going to be covering in the next part. And once again, if you're interested in exploring your own Sacred Seven and DRAGONsong for yourself, get in touch and we can hop on a Zoom call to have a chat about it. Okay, but that's it for part 2, and see you for part 3 if I've managed to keep your interest. Bye for now.